The house that hasn't aged. Since childhood, she was skeptical about various mystical stories. When I was little, I never believed in either brownies or ghosts. I remember well how, having gathered with the whole yard, we, small and curious tomboys, were looking for the treasures left by the pirates. I loved pirates and tales of sea adventures. But over the jokes that the oldest of us, the boy, Andre, told us, she always laughed and vehemently tried to convince everyone of his lies. Growing up, with a laugh, I read various creepy stories on websites and articles in magazines. Childhood memories often come and warm the soul. Andre and I often remember how I made fun of him. However, after an incident that happened to me in my youth, I radically changed my attitude to all sorts of horror stories. Often I had to rest with my aunt, Daddy's sister, in the village. She really loved farming and gardening, and after graduating from the institute, she returned to the village, unable to part with her native land. I, as a niece, who loved my aunt to the point of madness, gladly came to her, helped in everything and did everything that was required. By the way, my aunt also loved to pamper us with horror stories, about ghosts, demons or vampires. And I snorted with contempt and went into the room. Aunt, perhaps, was offended, but she did not show it. Probably understood that I was 100% realist. Being once again in the village, I met a girl there about my age, Rosa. As she later said, she was from a gypsy camp. Although, looking at her, I would hardly have guessed it. She had neither jet black hair nor dark brown eyes. And yes, she did dress up. Once she told me a local story about an abandoned house. They say there is a house here where sorcerers lived. I liked the story, although I didn't believe it at all. What struck me most was that I had never heard it from my aunt. Rosa decided to find this house, search it and begged me to go with her. On the way, she told me that there was a treasure in the house, some kind of charmed box with a photograph. We found the house quickly. It was no different from those nearby, although, according to Rosa, it was abandoned 10 years ago. A narrow path led to the house, which, to my surprise, had not been overgrown at all for so many years. After passing through it, we easily opened the gate and went into the courtyard. The yard was so clean that I got the impression that we had the wrong house and the owner could come out at any moment and drive us away for breaking into private territory. Rosa had already come to the door of the house and was waiting for me. I slowly approached the door and stopped. Something inside of me resisted me entering this house, most likely it was a simple fear. And yet I opened the door, it was also not difficult. When I entered the house, I felt a wild cold. Steam was literally coming out of my mouth, like in the cold. The more we were there, the more I got the impression that it was all set up on purpose, and someone was waiting for us there. From the street the house seemed very small, but inside it was just huge. A long corridor leading to many rooms, there were about 6 or 7 of them. Without thinking twice, Rosa went into the first room that came across. Literally a minute later I heard her voice, "Look for the box." I heard then with difficulty. My ears were blocked. Moving on wobbly legs, I went into a small room next to the one in which Rose was. She was empty. There was absolutely nothing here but an old closet. I looked into it, and seeing that there was nothing there, I breathed a sigh of relief. I was about to shout to Rosa that we should leave, when I suddenly heard a terrible roar, as if the same cabinet in front of which I was standing had fallen on the floor. I ran out of the room and called Rosa. To my question, she replied that she had not heard anything and seemed to me. However, despite stuffy ears, I distinctly heard this terrible roar. Suddenly I heard a clatter from the last room, which was the only one that was closed. Without thinking, I went there. The door, to my surprise, opened easily. The room was completely empty. There was nothing but a window. The box should be here, flashed through my mind. Turning around, I saw a picture that depicted a man and a woman, probably the owners of the house. Someone whispered, "Here, here, here." I knew it wasn't Rose. The whisper was too quiet, and Rose was not in this room. I walked over to the painting and carefully removed it from the hook. Empty wall. However, looking closer, I saw a small, one might say, doorknob and pulled it. Behind the painting was a small closet. In this locker there was a box. When I opened it, I saw a photograph of the owner of the house. She was wearing a very beautiful pendant. "Take it." Again a terrible whisper pierced his ears. As if in some kind of fog, I put the photo in my pocket and headed for the exit. When I got home, I did not find my aunt. Without undressing, I lay down and fell asleep. This is where the nightmare began, which I now really want to forget. I saw childhood. Clearly, every memory. Memory after memory. Then school. Institute. Wedding. But at that time it was not yet. Birth of a child. Car accident. Hospital. I woke up and saw a drip. Aunt sitting next to me. Mom. Later, my aunt told me that when she came home, she saw that I was sleeping in my clothes. She tried to wake me up, but she couldn't. She called an ambulance. I was in a coma for almost a week. None of the doctors could make a diagnosis. The next day, after I woke up, they let me go home. Later I learned that on the day I woke up, the sorcerer's house burned down. The photo is gone. It may seem to you that all this is nonsense and the story is made up. But it's not. I survived it all. I've seen almost all my life. And the lives of your loved ones. I saw the difficulties that our country and the whole world will face. Every day I experience deja vu. I hope this will end someday.